Hey guys, Matt from Upsilon Mining. Just coming back at you with another quick video. I ordered this PDU off of eBay, and when I went to plug it in, it wasn't working. So it's a standard, PDU, 240 volt input, C13 plugs on there. It's an APC, so it's a fairly decent PDU. But I took it apart and I noticed that this wire here was actually disconnected from the main wire, which comes in from over here. So this is like the ground wire. This was actually disconnected. I'm not sure why it was disconnected, but I think there might have been something wrong with the unit, so it was disconnected. They claimed they had tested it when they sent it, but I don't know if they actually did, because I was also missing another one of these switches here that goes on the PDU. Completely missing, and I didn't see it anywhere. And when I was moving this thing around, I could hear something rattling from inside of it. So what I don't know if this is even smart, maybe not. The wire looks a little bit like, I don't know if you can see that, like it looks like it's bubbling up here. I'm not sure if it's because it was overloaded with a lot of power, or if it's just really well used, or if this wire is safe to use. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any break in the wire, really. No, I'm not like an electrician or obviously a service technician on these PDUs, but I'm gonna reconnect this and see if that makes any difference. Slightly concerned, but hopefully nothing blows up if I plug this in. Maybe I shouldn't be screwing around with this thing, but I'm gonna try plugging it in and seeing what happens. This one I want to put in the garage because I have a 240 volt outlet in the garage as well. Right now it's not being used except for the EV. So when I'm not charging the EV, I want to kind of leverage this, because by using 240 volt, you actually get more efficiency with the wattage. Like, as you know, you basically have wattage divided by the volts. So if say you have 5,000 watts divided by 240 volts, or actually no, it's amps times, so it's amps times wattage equals, oh man, what is it now? Oh, it's so let's see, you have 120 volts. See, the volts times the amps. Yeah, so volts times the amps equals the wattage, right? So if you go 15 amps times, let's say yeah, so 15 amps times 240 volts, you get more watts, versus if you had 15 amps times 120 volts, you get less watts. So what does that mean? It means you can like take the power that you have and use it more efficiently. So what that means is, like, I say I have like a 100 amp breaker in my house, I could use less amps for the same wattage, if that makes sense. So if you don't have like a big panel, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be running a bunch of 120 volts everywhere. It makes more sense to try to leverage 240 volt if you can. Okay, so I've tried reattaching these switch mechanisms, and this is, I don't think that's gonna go back in. Like, literally, the guy on eBay that I bought this off of sold me a piece of crap. And I'm not gonna risk it with the wires turning brown and everything like that. So yeah guys, this is, take this as a lesson. Don't buy used PDUs. I mean, I bought a couple used PDUs that I'm running my farm off right now, and I have no problem with them, but like, do a proper inspection of these things, and if anything's off, like these breakers are wrong, like if wires inside are browning or turning black, things like that, it's probably better safe than sorry and not run with this crap. So I ended up buying a brand new PDU off there instead that I'll be using. So anyways guys. Yo guys, Matt from Upsilon Mining. I'm back at you with another video here. I just want to talk real quickly about PDUs in particular. What is a PDU? A PDU is nothing but a large power strip, essentially, that's designed to run on like a 240 volt outlet and then deliver that power safely to your 240 volt type devices, such as servers or mining rigs or anything that might require a higher amperage at a higher voltage, right? As you know, using a PDU with a 240 volt outlet allows you to get more efficiency for your electricity. And this is due in part simply to something with regard to the amperage and the properties of the voltage. Let me give you an example. If I run 120 volts at 100 amps, I get 112,000 watts, okay? So the way it works is volts times amps equals wattage, okay? So let's say you have 100 amps in your house, kind of like I do right now, and you run 120 volts on everything. So there's no 240 volts. The maximum wattage or that you'll be able to pull from your house essentially is 12,000 watts. If you have, which isn't going to be the case, but you have 240 volts, you now can run 24,000 watts. Okay, now as we know, we measure GPU rigs and GPUs in general in terms of wattage, right? For example, a 3090 might use, for example, 310 watts or 315 watts, right? So if you run, if you filled up this with 3090s, let's for example, you'll be able to run, so you get a maximum capacity of 12,000 watts. 80% rule, okay guys, that gives you 9,600 watts capacity. And for 24,000 watts, 0.8 is 19,200 capacity. As you can already see, it's almost twice the amount of wattage. So a 3090 takes up 315 watts. How many 3090s, pop quiz, how many 3090s can you run on 120 volts at 100 amps, and how many 3090s can you run at 240 volts at 100 amps, right? The answer is essentially the amount divided by, which allows you to run 30 units. If you have 240 volts, okay, 240 volts, 19,200, sorry, 19,200, 19,200 watts with the 80% put in, divided by 315, you can run 60 units. And more units equals more hash power, right? Okay, so this is kind of why we will recommend a lot of YouTubers and anyone in the crypto mining scene, everyone wants to run their stuff off of 240 volts because you can make that power go much further, right? And it is more efficient with regard to like essentially how much electricity you're actually using by running 240 volts. Anyways, that being said, I was shopping around for a PDU, okay? And this is the one that I got. This is a new one I just got, and I had to get a replacement. This is actually for the garage, so it's actually for the garage. I actually got a meter box in the garage, ready to go on a 240 volt outlet, and I purchased this one here, this APC rack, this one here, from this furniture seller. It looks like selling used stuff on eBay for $100 US, and this thing is completely non-functional. I took apart the unit where the breakers are on the actual PDU. One of the wires wasn't even connected, and the wire was actually bubbling up from inside. It was turning brown, and it just wasn't working at all. And not only that, but the actual switch, the knuckle mechanism that flips when the breaker switches on the PDU, was completely broken, and one was completely missing. So I basically asked for a refund right away, and I'm really surprised they didn't test this because, first off, I took it apart. Their response was basically that, oh, it must have got damaged in shipping. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. It could damage in shipping, but any external damage jostling around is not going to cause a wire inside to disconnect from the actual contact inside. It makes zero sense. So I know it's a bunch of BS that they said they tested this. They just basically found this probably in the corner of their warehouse and sold it to me like a schmuck, and the damn thing doesn't even work. So I'm not going to bother with it. So what I did now is I went back on eBay and I picked up this one here. Looks pretty good. It's a LCD metered PDU, 240 volt, 30 amps, L6-30P. Okay, 6 C13 outlets on it. So you run the C13 to C14 cable. The C14 cable is actually the male side, and that kind of goes right in. Or is it the female side? Yeah, female side, and that goes in the back of a power supply, server power supply, or ATX power supply. And oh wait, the other thing. Back to my little diagram there about this. Power supplies usually have higher rated capacity at higher watts or higher voltage. So if you run a power supply at 1200 watts, for example, an HP 1200, you can actually literally get 1200 watts on that. But if you run it with like 120 volt, you might only be able to get 800 watts on it. So it really kind of depends what voltage you're pushing through it. But generally speaking, when it comes to crypto mining, it's always better to go 240 volts over 120 volts. Just because of this, you get more capacity, more wattage, and more efficiency. So I got a bunch of rigs with GPUs in the garage running off of 120 right now. I'm going to switch all those over to the 240 volt outlet in the garage. When I charge my car, I'm basically going to shut that PDU off and charge the car for the 5-6 hours. I don't drive a lot in my electric car, so I don't have to charge too often. Maybe once a week, twice a week at the very most. And I'm just going to unplug them all during that time. And that'll also help me with rotating the usage of the power in the house and not pushing the breaker panel too much, because I don't want to obviously exceed the 80% rule of that. So if I have a 100 amp panel, I don't want to go over 80 amps on the entire thing, right? So it doesn't leave much for the rest of the house, but I'm fairly limited in this house. I did reach out to the electrical company trying to get an increase for the 240 volt, to get a 200 amp or more panel in here, and they just won't do it because the conduit running through like the front of the house is actually going through this concrete barrier. So I guess all the concrete and all the brick and everything would have to be broken out, and they don't even know if it's even possible. So at this point, I'm kind of like just maxed out on power. And I'll probably be looking at getting either another location at some point in time if it makes sense, or just running with what I have. And it's a good, keeps me in check, right? I mean, from buying more stuff that I can't afford, and then the power on top of that all. So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna try this one here. I did see one from Nerd Gears that I was looking at. I know Red Panda tends to advertise this one. Not this one, but this site here. But it was like literally twice the price on it, and I don't know if it was worth it necessarily. It looks very similar to the one I got. Like if you look at the Nerd Gear unit, you have basically your breaker switch at the top here, and yeah, the one I got only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this has 8 outlets on it, and the one I got has only 6 here. So obviously it's a little cheaper, but I don't need to run more than 6 rigs in the garage off of the 240 volt. Yeah, I only have, maybe maximum 6 in there. If I need more than that, I could just use a 120. But I think this is probably all I will need for the garage versus the 8 here. And I don't want to pay it twice as much. It doesn't make any sense. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna leave it there. I do tend to like the APC, which is why I bought this APC, just for the name, because I thought it'd be better. But obviously, it's not always the case when it's buying used crap off eBay. So I would just say, guys, be careful buying PDUs off eBay. If you buy PDU off eBay, inspect it, take a look at it, make sure all the toggles and everything is working. Ask the seller to test it before they ship it, because otherwise it's a big pain in the ass when you got a huge PDU that it was shipped to you and you need to send it back, especially if you need to pay return shipping. Thankfully, they just returned it, so I won't need to do anything, thankfully. So yeah, that's about it, guys. I'm just going to leave it there for now. Anyways, if you like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.